of them turned out to be right-wingers who voted for him.
Both of them were actually anti-Trump. One of them donated to Project Blue, and the other one was a Ukrainian supporter who made ads for the Democratic campaign and went all the way to Ukraine and was stationed there. I don't know how, but he had funding somehow. And he was stationed there in an effort to promote Ukrainian resistance. So the idea that these people were like anti Trump people, I mean, pro Trump people. The idea these people were pro Trump people is just ludicrous. I mean, it's very, very ludicrous. If they were pro Trump, logically speaking, why would they want Trump dead?
For every left-wing shooter, there are at least 3 right-wingers. The
Actually, that's not true. There's been various leftist shooters. I mean, recently there was a trans shooter. I'm not saying the one that killed Kirk, not that guy. There was one that was down in Mississippi, I believe, and he shot up a school. No, I mean she. I don't know. I guess she. I'll say. The transgender shot up a school. I believe it was a school. I'm not sure, but in any case, there was a transgender shooting recently. You know, hypothetically, she could be right wing, he could be right wing. I don't care what pronouns you want to use. Anyways, the person in question could be right wing, they could be left wing. We don't know. But given they are trans, I think there's a high likelihood they were left wing. I'm not sure though. I could be fact checked on that, could be wrong, but I'm just doubting it. And I mean that's not counting either too the numerous amounts of riot violence has been against ICE agents. I heard there was recordings of people throwing rockets at people like fireworks, and I mean that's a lot more dangerous than a gun. That's an explosive. And I'm not saying that there's been a lot of like assassinations in recent history, but there has been a lot of shootings, and I'm not going to be one of these people who acts like there is no right wing violence. There is right wing violence. I just think it's a lot less prominent. That's my belief. People like to say, "Oh, look at the Proud Boys," but I mean, they're not. They're nowhere near as significant as Antifa, which is like a sort of militaristic faction of the left.
vast majority of these type shootings always turn out to be right-wingers, and it's usually white supremacists. That's every year, year after year. Even the White House admits this. Or they did when they were under a sane administration. But in this administration,
Isn't that convenient that the liberal leftist institution that Biden had, they admitted they admitted that there was more right-wing shootings. I mean, I feel like that's just ideologically convenient, right? Like even if you are a leftist, you gotta admit that is ideologically convenient. I mean, Biden says my side does less crime. It's like, well, yeah, it makes you look better if you say that. Um, it would also make Trump look better if he said that too. I'm not one to not understand that, but I understand that Trump might be doing the same thing in regards to saying his side does less crime. But we do actually, I've seen more instances personally of riot violence, like George Floyd riots, for instance, the riots against ICE agents, for example. I've just personally seen more instances of leftist violence. I'm not saying there isn't right wing violence, I've just seen more instances of left wing violence. Apparently, the Pelosi's were attacked, and Mr. Pelosi, uh, Nancy's husband, right? He got hit in the head with a hammer really hard. Survived, but the point being is right wing violence does happen, but I definitely think there's more significant amounts of left wing violence. In his point that Biden thought there was more, or the administration of Biden's, or the presidency, or the organization at the time, that doesn't really mean anything, because it's like, it's the organization saying its group does less crime. it would mean a lot more if you had a neutral organization saying this. Like, if you had someone neutral and a non-biased party saying this would mean a lot more. Also, if you backed up your claim with any amount of significant examples. I don't know many I don't know many left-wing examples. I'm not an expert on this by any means. I know enough to, like, cite examples and remember things. I'm pretty politically savvy in terms of that. Definitely more so than the average person, but definitely enough to, like, understand a claim and debunk it, which is what I'm doing right now.
Administration, our vice president lied and said that it's only happening on the left. The vast majority, 3-1.
I mean, obviously it's a lie, but it's a lie to protect the interest of his group, which is pretty much what Biden was doing when he was saying that there was majorly right wing crime. So I think they're both doing the same thing here.
One are coming from the right, but Big Brother wants you to think it's only on the left. The party told you to reject the evidence of your eyes and ears. It was their final.
So show the evidence. I mean, what evidence of our eyes and ears? Can you show that? Can you present the evidence, the examples? And, we could sit at a table and, or maybe not me and you, but somebody, and we can bring up all the examples that we have on record, compare them side by side, and say which one has more. And I think the problem with a lot of these figureheads of these movements who get, say 1.1k upvotes, 7k views, which isn't the most insane amount by any means, but for channels like this that have massive followings, massive audiences, it's very easy to lie because your audience will kind of regurgitate what you say. If you want a truth summary, you want to care about truth, you want to care about knowledge, you want to care about facts, I'd love to see you, a couple other leftists, liberals, whatever, sit side by side with conservative Republicans, and everybody brings up their evidence. They bring as much evidence as they can find, as many examples as they can find. And, we have a neutral judge set in place. They don't give a fuck about your conflicts. And we go over the examples. We analyze which one has more violence, more extreme violence, etc. And we come to a conclusion based on that evidence that's brought to the table. But I don't think anybody would be willing to do that because nobody on politics is willing to have a good faith discussion on things. People want to assume things when it benefits them because the other side will do that, and therefore it's an endless cycle of lies, manipulations, and power grabbing in an attempt to beat out the other side. And it's going to keep going like this in America, especially in America, until there is a decisive winner. In Canada, for example, there isn't really this to the same degree because there is already a winner in terms of, like, who's running the country. It's very solidly the liberals. In America, there's very much this, like, back and forth conflict. But again, if you want to come to the truth about, how many, gun violence claims there are, or how much knife violence or violence in general there is, politically motivated, let's specify. But if you want to go over that, you could do that. I just don't think anyone on the left or the right will do that in good faith.
Final, most essential command. So when Trump tells you how great he's doing, try to force a smile, nod, and make yourself believe what you know is not true.
Oh man, he never covers this, but I gotta go into Trump because he did fail on a lot of things that people were expecting him to do. I mean, there's the whole ending wars thing. The Ukrainian war was not ended. The Israeli war was not ended. The Israeli-Palestine conflict is still ongoing. the Russian-Ukrainian conflict still going. He said when he gets into office, he'll end all the wars. There's still wars. All the wars that were started when Biden was president are still happening. All the promises to release the Epstein list, all that discussion has been thrown out the window. He's been taking corruption money from Israel. He's been saying he was America first, but then he bends the knee, gets under the table, and starts sucking Netanyahu off. So the idea that he was America first was ludicrous. He's Israel first. The idea that he was going to help this country release the Epstein list and stop all these foreign wars was also ludicrous because he did none of the things he was said to do. I'd love if Aron Ra, went into this point and just hammered home on Trump about this, because these are valid points that even the right would agree with. Because I would say I'm on the right, but people who are on the right, like me, are disappointed that he's not doing these things, and they think he's a sellout. We think he's sold out to Israel, and we think he's sold out in general. He promised to be anti-status quo, but he's doing exactly the same thing that we were hating on the previous Biden administration for, sucking up to corporations and sucking up to these huge companies and these huge figures in media and figures in politics, and trying to gain favor with the rich rather than helping his base. So if you really want to dig into Trump, there is a lot of material. You're just not willing to go there.
I didn't yet know who the shooter was, but that didn't matter. As I've already said so many times the last week and all through my career, I neither advocate nor excuse violence. Never have.
I gotta say, he's right. It doesn't matter who did the shooting. Liberals and leftists, or whatever you want to call these people, they're going to say it was a right-winger because that's ideologically convenient. They're going to say it was internal strife within the party, and that caused, say Kirk to get assassinated, and it's a Groyper or it's somebody like that. And then they're going to say, with regards to, say, the right wing, they're going to say liberals are evil and they did this, it's their fault. They assassinated Kirk, they did it, and they're at fault and they're evil. So you're not going to get truth out of anything here, and I agree with him on this, because people aren't going to care about the evidence. I do, though. I think it's definitely sets a bad precedent when you allow political violence because it sets a precedent that everyone's a target. And not only that, but with regards to people thinking what they want, that's kind of just the reality of media. People are going to buy into sensationalism above all else. But this guy definitely was a leftist, like, regardless of how you feel. He had a trans girlfriend, which on its own doesn't prove anything. But he also had casings on his bullets which were Antifa inspired. He had an anti-fascist Italian song on his one bullet casing, and on the other bullet casing, it was some anti-fascist, line or rhetoric. So it's very much a solid shut case on him being a leftist.